that walk was just the moment when I said to myself, I want a guide dog. And guide dogs do such amazing things for you.
Hi, this is Mel Stevens. Welcome back to Mel's Blind Life, the YouTube channel all about blindness.
So Test Drive a Guide Dog was a program run by Guide Dogs Victoria that they started doing in 2011 was the first one they did. I'm not sure how many programs of that exact same style they ended up doing for children and young adults who were blind and had low vision and who were potentially going to go on to be guide dog handlers. I know of about 3 or 4 different camps like this one that I went on. So it all started when I started saying that I wanted to be a guide dog handler in probably about June or July of that year. And my family had had guide dogs for a very long time, and it was just a kind of a natural progression for me to go on and get a guide dog. I always knew that I was going to do it, and it just seemed like then was the time. I was 17 and a half. I was in my second last year of school, and I was beginning to lose my vision somewhat rapidly. I had begun losing my vision probably maybe 3 or 4 years prior, and my vision was at that stage getting to a point where I sort of wanted to start exploring new places, and I knew that I would be going to university or some kind of further education or maybe a job after I finished school, and I just felt that I'd be more functional with a guide dog. And as I said, it was basically just a natural progression for me at that stage. So I can't remember how it initially started. I think I said to Guide Dogs Victoria that I wanted to look at being a guide dog handler, and for some reason or other, I think they decided I was too young, or they just wanted to take it really cautiously for me to go into guide dog mobility. So the first thing that I started doing was my mum's dog Nerida, who she had had for a very long time. She'd actually worked her for nearly 10 and a half years, had actually just retired when I started thinking about doing guide dog mobility. So what happened was the gentleman who was the instructor, the guide dog instructor for our area, started doing some work with me, and he started watching me do some of the basic handling with Nerida. So I remember one afternoon he came after school and he got me to show him how I groom her and how I feed her and how you toilet her and things like that. And then we did what you would call in the kind of American guide dog schools, especially guide dogs for the blind, what they call Juno work. And Juno work is work with the harness. We just call it harness work or handle work. So it's basically work with the guide dog harness and leash in your left hand, and you have an instructor holding the kind of the breastplate or the front of the harness where and walking in front of you, sort of simulating what it would feel like through the harness to use a guide dog. So we started doing Juno work. I started learning about all the different positions, all the different ways to give commands. That was when we were still using correction and some leash correction and harness correction, and so I learned about about giving corrections appropriately, and also about praising correctly and all those sorts of things. So I did that work probably beginning in July, I reckon, June or July. I know it was winter, and I remember it being so damn cold out on some of my Juno walks. So then I got a phone call from Guide Dogs Victoria to say that I had been invited to go on a 2-night, 3-day residential program at Arnold Cook House. I will link down in the description down below, I'll link a tour I did of Arnold Cook House about 12 months ago. And I went into Arnold Cook House for 2 nights with 3 other vision impaired teenagers. I was 17, this was in October, just before I turned 18, so I was 17 years and 8 months old. I don't know why that's so important. And there were 3 other kids on that program who all had different vision levels and different kind of orientation and mobility skills, but all of us had been doing similar work to what I'd been doing with the Juno work and everything like that, and we were all looking at becoming guide dog handlers. And I think the orientation and mobility specialists, along with the guide dog mobility instructors, had seen that we were all 4 ready for this program. So this program was the first experience I had of using a dog in harness. So the program was run in the second week of the October holidays. As I said, it was 2 nights, 3 days. We arrived sort of early on Wednesday morning, about 9 or 9:30 I think it was, and we stayed in Arnold Cook House until about mid-afternoon Friday. So when we first arrived, it was basically just getting oriented for those who had never been to Arnold Cook House, just getting oriented to their house, their room and the way around Arnold Cook House and things like that. And we did a meet and greet session, and we did some more Juno work with instructors. The way that they ran the program for instructor wise was they had 2 instructors from the guide dog services team, and they also had 2 instructors from the children's mobility service present at all times during the day. I can't remember exactly, but they might have had a guide dog instructor stay with us both nights. Yes, they did. In fact, I can remember they had a guide dog instructor stay with us both nights as well as the lady who is the night supervisor at Arnold Cook House. So anyway, we got there on Wednesday morning, we settled in, we did some more Juno work before lunch, and we also got told about the dog that we were going to be having for the program. So we were matched with a guide dog that was towards its end of its training. I know that one of the dogs who was in that program went out in like the next class. So these dogs were all 4 towards the very end of their training. And we had 3 beautiful black male dogs, and we had 1 female white dog. So the dog that I had was called Zorro, and that is the dog that is in the picture, the thumbnail picture for this video. And he just turned 2, actually while we were on the program. He had his 2nd birthday, and he went on to be a guide dog for a lady, which is really exciting to know that he was able to go on and be a successful guide dog. So we had some Juno work, and then we had some lunch after our Juno work, and they tried to simulate it as much as they possibly could to a actual guide dog class. So we did the morning of the receiving of our dogs exactly the same way that 12 months later I did my first morning of guide dog training with Darcy, which was arriving, getting settled in, getting unpacked, doing Juno work, being told about your dog in a group session, and receiving your what they called show bag that had some important pieces in it for looking after your dog in that time. So for the test drive guide dog program, we were given an old harness that we would use on the dog. We were given a toilet harness, a lead, a collar, I think we had a bone, and we also had the dog's food, because that dog was going to be staying with us in Arnold Cook House for the whole time of that program, basically. So after lunch, they did exactly the same thing that they do on a guide dog class when you are given your dog. We went back to our rooms and we had to sit quietly and calmly in the chair at our desk and wait for the instructor to knock on the door and bring our dog in. When the instructor brings the dog in, you basically are left alone with your dog to do a little bit of bonding and just show your dog around the room, show it where its water is, show it where its food is, and everything like that. So when we got our dogs, we spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes in our room, showing it where our dog's water was, showing it where our bed was, things like that. Now, we had these kind of task sheets for the program, which were looking at tasks to do with looking after the dog, and we had to, I guess, tick them off every evening. We had to sit down and tick off our task sheet, and that had things on it like provide water, relieve the dog, maintain obedience, things like that. So I think that was probably something we learned about straight after we got our dogs. Was we went up to the lounge room doing some hallway obedience. I'm not going to explain hallway obedience to you now because this video is just getting longer and longer, but I will one day show you hallway obedience. And then we just went into the lounge room and we got to just relax with our dogs and just learn about obedience and our tasks and everything like that. The first night we had our dogs in our rooms, I think some of the kids might have really struggled with having their dog in their room. I know for myself, I just was something I was used to. You know, my mum's dog used to sleep in my room sometimes. As I said, I had one of my mum's dogs when it retired, Binny, slept in my room for a couple of years after she retired. You know, I was really sort of used to having a dog sleep in my room, and it was just something that was natural for me. But I think some of the kids actually struggled a little bit with, you know, like what happens if the dog gets up in the middle of the night, and I can't remember whether we had any disasters, but I'm sure we probably did. Then on the first full day, on the only full day, we got to experience our first ever harness walk, and this was an amazing feeling. We got into the instructors' cars and we drove to a place called North Balwyn, which is a suburb of Melbourne, basically, not very far from the Guide Dogs campus. And we did what's called a residential walk, which is basically just a block around where people live, around houses, around a residential area. It's very quiet, it's very easy, it's not like hard work for the dogs, and it's really the basic left and right turns, stopping at curbs, going forward. It's basically the most basic in harness work that you can do with your dog. So we did a block walk, it's important to point out they didn't let us just go wildly free with our dogs. They were very cautious, and I think that was probably a very good thing. The guide dog instructors and the children's mobility instructors, I'm pretty sure we actually had one guide dog instructor and one children's mobility instructor with us on our walk. I can actually remember the instructors that I had on all 3 of my walks, and the guide dog instructor did not let us off the leash. So we had the dog with the lead and the collar on its neck and the harness on, but what they also did was they put a second lead onto the dog's collar, and they being the instructor, the guide dog instructor, also had control of the dog at all times. So they, if something went wrong, obviously they could regain control of the dog. So we just did a gentle, simple walk in harness that first morning. And that one to me it was great and it was really good fun. That one to me was a little bit more sort of, yeah, okay, whatever, this is kind of normal. I could still see a little bit then, so I could see like where the footpath was, and I could see where the curb of the road was and everything like that. So it wasn't a big kind of change for me, but it still felt good to be able to actually, I think about halfway along the walk, I realized, oh, hang on a minute, I can, instead of walking like this with my head down, I can walk up with my head up and just sort of, notice what's around me and not look at the footpath. So then that afternoon, we actually did something else. I can't even remember what it was, but I remember we went, and when we got back to guide dogs, we put our boys and girls into what's called the free run area, which is basically just a big open dog run. And so we put the boys and girl into the free run, and we went and did something else with the children's mobility team. I don't even remember what that thing was. I know we went out and had lunch at a Chinese restaurant, but I can't remember what else we did. It was probably something to do with guide dogs. I just can't remember. That was a long time ago. And then we got back to guide dogs and we did whole obedience. We got the dogs back. We did whole obedience. We did our chart things again, and we brushed the dogs and everything like that. And that was the first and only time that we got 2 of the dogs mixed up. Myself and the other girl who was on the camp got our dogs mixed up when we got them out of the back of the car, when we got back from the walk actually. Our dogs, when we put them in the car, mine had been on the left and hers had been on the right. Because they were both exactly the same colour, they were both black males, they had swapped over where they even had the same colour collar on, and we didn't realise that they had swapped sides in the back of the car, so we ended up swapping dogs by accident, but the instructors put it right. So that was really the end of the second day. The third day was probably the biggest day of the whole camp, and this was the Friday. Once again, we got up, we did our morning routine of feeding and toileting the dog and having our own breakfast and having a shower and all that stuff. We also had to pack that morning. I can remember being like, oh my gosh, we have all these things to do, and we have to pack as well because we were going home later on that afternoon and we weren't going to have time to sort of pack during the day. And after we had packed and done our morning with the dogs, we got to do our second and, in my opinion, best harness walk with the dogs of the whole camp. And this was a walk around the central business district of Fairfield, which is another suburb of Melbourne, very close to the guide dog campus. I hope one day to show you Fairfield and some of the walks around there when I'm in training. But Fairfield, the walk in there is basically you start in a residential street. You do 3 sides of residential and 1 side is semi-business district with strip shops and a level crossing over a train line, and then a footbridge back over to the train line with the world's most rickety stairs. Seriously, those stairs have been there for a very long time, and every time you walk on them, you think that they're going to collapse underneath you, but they've been there longer than I have, and they're still there. So we did the walk based in a cafe, and this was probably the best walk for me. My dog did an amazing job. He was such a good boy, and we started off in the residential area. Even though we started in the cafe, the instructor sort of gave us a guide to where the starting point of the walk was, and then we got to pick up the harness handle when we were in the residential part, and off we go. Once again, we were connected to the instructor by a lead, and then we had our own lead and collar and harness in our hand. So we did the 3 sides of the residential walk, and then we did the 4th side, which was over the railway crossing, back over the bridge and through the shops. And that was really the point that I went, this is amazing. I want this. That walk was just the moment when I said to myself, I want a guide dog. And guide dogs do such amazing things for you. We walked through the shops. We went across the railway crossing. And, you know, even though the bells actually started ringing while I was on the crossing still, and usually I would like panic and, oh my God, am I going to be able to see my way across in time and everything like that. But like that dog was still walking. Even though the bell started, he didn't panic. He didn't put a paw out of place. Zorro just kept walking and like, yeah, I know we've got to get off this railway crossing, but we don't need to panic. We've got plenty of time. And that was the first time I had ever like walked across a railway crossing when the bells had started, when I was halfway across, and I hadn't panicked, because he was just so like, no skin off my nose, mate. You know, just keep holding that harness handle and I'll guide you across here safely. So when we got back to the cafe, and we finished walking, I bent down and I gave that dog a huge kiss and a hug, and I just said to him, thank you so much. You know, you have just shown me exactly what you were supposed to show me on this program, and that was how amazing guide dogs are. And, you know, I just thanked him and said, you know, good on you, Zorro. You were a very good boy today. And I even get teary thinking about it now. So, the other thing that we did while we were on that walk was we actually had an opportunity to go back and do sort of a comparison, if you like, of what would that walk be like if you did it with your long cane. So I didn't do that myself because I sort of knew what that would, you know, what the difference would be like, but a couple of the others actually did the same walk again, without their dogs, with their canes instead, and they got to make the comparison between walking through those shops and everything with a cane rather than their dog. Anyway, we went back to guide dogs, we had lunch, and then we got to do lunch with our parents. So our parents got to meet our temporary guide dogs, and we did an award ceremony. The children's camps always did awards at the end of their programs, which was really good, and it was a really fun way of finding out like what skills you had used during the week that really made the instructors proud. And I received the Vocal Coach Award because apparently my voice with my dog was really good, and apparently the instructors, both guide dog and children's mobility instructors, thought that my voice with my dog was really good, and it helped him a lot, and they were very proud of that. So I got the Vocal Coach Award for my dog. And the sort of the final thing that we got to do with these dogs was just a nice, simple walk along the river beside the Guide Dogs Victoria campus. For those of you who don't know Melbourne very well, we have a river here called the Yarra River, and it runs all the way through the city and out through the suburbs. And the campus at Guide Dogs Victoria is right beside one of the walks of the Yarra River, and they use that walk quite a bit in class and everything, and that's sort of the the easy walk. There's no traffic, you can just go straight for miles. So we did the river walk on the last afternoon with our parents present, and they got to see us using the dog, and how we learnt about the dog and everything like that. And that was probably the second most amazing moment on the camp for me. Not only because my parents were getting to see, how much I'd learnt about guide dogs and stuff, but also because the instructor who I was with took off the lead. We were probably about halfway or 3/4 of the way through the walk. We were on our way back to guide dogs, and the instructor I was with didn't say anything, but I sort of noticed or realised that he'd taken the lead off my dog and that we were free. And that was the first time I walked with a guide dog without an instructor's lead. And when I realised it, and I said to him, I said, "Did you just take the lead off, Pete?" And he goes, "No, I might have." And I said to Zorro, I said, "Come on, mate, we're going to show him how good we are." And I sort of huffed him up a little bit and, started walking a little bit faster. And I actually felt my head go up even higher because, here I was with this amazing sense of freedom with this dog, walking independently. So, and then of course we had to give the dogs back, and I don't want to talk about that. So that was really the program and the first guide dog experience that I had. As I said, the afternoon ended, we had to give the dogs back. They told us not to cry. I bawled my eyes out because I'd learnt so much, and I'd learnt so much with that dog, and I hope that that dog and I, we kind of did bond over that time. And I said to myself, I said, if I was on the waiting list right now, I reckon that they would match me with this dog, because we did do well. We did get on well, and it was a really good, he was a really good dog. And maybe we wouldn't have got on well, like maybe he wouldn't have been a good guide dog for me, but at the time I just bonded with that dog, and he was really good. And saying goodbye broke my heart, and I've never seen that dog since. I don't think I want to see that dog again. I mean, only because I know that if I did, I would probably cry a lot. He would nearly be 10 years old now. His birthday is in early October. So he would probably be 10 years old now, and he's probably retired or nearly retired by now. So anyway, he was a really good dog, and whoever he ended up with is a very lucky person. But that program was just an amazing experience for me. And I'm just grateful for the fact that I was able to do that program and learn about guide dogs and have such thorough training before I went in and got my own dog, because I don't know if I would have managed, certainly in the first 12 months, with my own dog as well as I did if I hadn't have had that training. So that is really the story of my first guide dog experience. I'll tell you guys the story of how I got Darcy, and that kind of follows on from this particular experience in another video. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this story. Tell me down in the comment section down below about your first guide dog experience, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.